pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of Michigan and to the state for which it stands, to the beautiful peninsula, united by a bridge of steel, where equal opportunity and justice to all of our nation.
Thank you.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Shippers?
Here.
Coleman? Here. Wolfile?
Here.
Meinhardt?
Here.
Mayor Schultz?
Here. At this time, we're looking for an approval of the agenda. We are going to take one thing off of tonight's agenda, and that is going to be the trucks.
Yeah, Mayor, we can just simply table it when we get there.
Table it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry, Marcus.
Oh, it's okay.
I thought we were going to just take it right off. Okay. So if we could have an approval for tonight's agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmembers Coleman?
Yes.
Wolfile?
Yes.
Meinhardt?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Mayor Schultz?
Yes. Motion carries. This time, we'll open the floor for any public comments. If you do come forward, we do ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, and if you would please write your name and address, we would appreciate that. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment and move to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the consent agenda. And this evening we have the minutes from the regular meeting that was held on April 4th, the minutes from the closed session held on April 4th, and the minutes from the work session that was held on April 14th.
I have a comment or a question related to the work session minutes. I'm just looking at them for the first time, so I'm trying to read them quickly, but I don't see any reference to the discussion we had about stormwater runoff and the importance of trying to capture that in some of our upcoming plans when we're tearing up structures.
Is
it in there?
Yeah, it just simply states, discussion between members of the City Council and staff ensued from time to time regarding various areas of the budget, concerns ranging from the status of state shared revenue to the use of environmentally friendly construction materials and techniques were discussed. If you want us to put a finer point on it, we can, but just looking at this as minutes and not transcripts.
All right.
Of the meeting, that's what that was in reference to.
Yeah, I just don't want it to get lost because I feel like it's really important, and I know that we didn't make any decision about anything. It was just a discussion point. We had really good discussion related to it, I hope we can continue to have some discussion related to it.
So, and I think that Councilmember Spillman's concerns, I'd like to see it more up front here in the minutes where we talked about opening the city charter. I think that that discussion or that concern probably warrants as much of a look-see this year as does that charter. If Councilmember Spillman's going to lead that charge and discussion.
Yeah, I didn't bring it up at that point, but I appreciate you calling attention to it at that point.
It was just in reference.
Yeah, no, it's...
Yeah.
So would you like to see a little bit more information drawn out in the minutes, Sherry?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a spot where, and it would probably be in that last paragraph, just to specifically reference the need to capture some of their stormwater runoff and to look at opportunities to do that in the future, especially when we're tearing up areas, we're already working on them.
Okay, could we get a motion to approve the agenda with that update? Or, excuse me, the minutes. I got agenda on the brain.
I'll make a motion to approve the, is it the consent agenda with the...
That is the work session,
with
yes.
the changes to...
Do we have to pull that out of the consent agenda to amend it?
Probably should have about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, we
But,
kind of already did.
but we did it. You guys did it on the fly, so that's okay.
Sorry.
So we did it on the fly. Do you want us to go backwards or just...
You want me to go back?
We want to do it right.
God knows we don't want to.
If you want to make a motion
May-
to pull it out, and then...
Go ahead and do that, Sherry. Let's do it right.
I'll make a motion to pull the minutes from the work session out of the consent agenda in order to be amended.
Yeah, I'll support it.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Wolfile?
Yes.
Meinhardt?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes?
Spillman?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes.
And we could just approve the consent agenda or do this first?
I think since this is open, why don't we just do this first?
Okay.
I'd like to request an amendment in addition to the work session minutes to include discussion related to stormwater runoff into Lake Cadillac and to the discussion that was held related to that.
I'll support that.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Meinhardt?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes?
Spillman?
Yes.
Wolfile?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
Could we have a roll call, Sandy?
Councilmember Shippers?
Yes.
Spillman?
Yes.
Wolfile?
Yes.
Meinhardt?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And this evening we have a community spotlight. Marcus, would you like to introduce that?
My pleasure. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening we have Mr. Bill Bradfield with the Miskanska group, who's going to make a presentation to the City Council. Bill, if you please take the podium and go to the mic, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you, Marcus. Good evening, council members and ladies and gentlemen in the audience. It gives me great pleasure tonight to stand before you again. Every time I come before the council, you can rest assured it's going to be good news and happy report of another successful adventure. And when we put together the world tour on snowmobiles last year in February, which started right here in Cadillac, Michigan, we had the good fortune of having the mayor and Marcus at our opening ceremony, which was the beginning of NASF also. We had a blessing of the snowmobiles. At that meeting, the kickoff, we had 3 Russians at the meeting. We had 2 Canadians, and they all flew in and stayed at my home in Hoxseyville 2 days before we began the ride. And the trip started in Cadillac. Then we caravanned up to Sault Ste. Marie. We rode out of Sault Ste. Marie for 3 days. Then we crossed the border and we rode in Canada all the way up to Hearst. That was another 3-day part of the ride. We took 2 days off. We flew to Bodo, Norway. We rode snowmobiles in Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. And there's never been a trip like this that has ever taken place in the history of snowmobiling. And going back to our first ride in 2010, we set a record then, and that record was a ride from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan to Tok, Alaska with 54 people, median age 62 years old. That was our first snowmobile ride for diabetes research, and in the first ride, we raised $102,000 for diabetes research. It was just absolutely incredible. But since I've been working with the club and the president of the club, I find that we need resources to make good things happen, and you guys have always been there by our side, and we really do appreciate that. So we wanted to show our appreciation by putting together a plaque commemorating the ride, and I'm going to read that to you right now. I won't read all the names, but I'll read the other content that's in the plaque. On February 26, 2015, snowmobilers from the Mishkanska International Snowmobile Club completed the first ever world tour on snowmobiles. The opening ceremony started in Cadillac, Michigan at the Coyote Crossing on February 5, 2015, at the start of the 2015 North American Snow Festival with a blessing of the snowmobilers and riders. The noble cause they rode for was diabetes research and awareness promotion. There are 1 million people in Michigan, 29 million people in America, and 387 million people in the world that suffer with this dreaded disease. In 2014, there was a staggering $612 billion spent on diabetes in America alone, just one country. The 62 riders, some segment riders, passed through 12 time zones. The miles traveled on snowmobiles collectively was a staggering 54,660 miles for the entire group. They started in the USA, rode in Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia. Total raised for diabetes research was $37,000. Then I have a list of the participants from all the different countries and all the riders that came from the Cadillac area, which the Cadillac Winter Warriors were very supportive also, and we had probably 10 of them ride in the kickoff ride. But the following statement was made at the starting ceremony: be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Cadillac, Michigan, does hereby recognize and support the Mishkanska 2015 Snowmobile World Tour. Carla Filkins, Mayor, City of Cadillac. On behalf of all the members of Mishkanska, I would like to thank the Mayor and the City of Cadillac Council, and also Marcus and the businesses and residents for their support of this precedent-setting world event. It is because of your support and efforts we are one step closer to finding a cure for diabetes research, or diabetes, I'm sorry. So it was a tremendous success, and a couple interesting things. Number one, this was shortly after the invasion in the Ukraine of the Russians. And a lot of people said, Bill, aren't you a little bit nervous taking your people with you over to Russia? And the first response I would say, we're going to be riding north of the Arctic Circle. They don't have wars up there. The bullets don't even come out of the guns. It's so cold. But there's a group called the International Snowmobile Congress that meets once a year in different parts of North America. And I met with the Russians, the Swedes, the Finns for 3 years prior to launching this ride. So it just didn't happen with a couple phone calls and a weekend of sending mailers out. There was a lot of work behind it. But when I had credentials like the City of Cadillac supporting me, the City of Sault Ste. Marie, the City of Hearst, Ontario, the City of Bodo, Norway, Salla, Finland, St. Petersburg, Russia, when I presented those kind of credentials, that's what really helps stimulate the donations for the ride. So we are very fortunate to be able to do that. And I'm going to ask you to pose for a picture here in just a second. But I wanted to say a couple other things. For about 8 years, I keep saying that's the last big one. Well, I'm also a member of the Lions Club in Cadillac, and I'm still president of the Mishkanska Club. That will change May 7th of this year. Finally, after 8 years, I kept telling the group, this guy too, that, you know, somebody else needs to step up and see how easy this is. So, in the summer of this year, in honor of the Lions International Centennial, their centennial year is 2017, we have put forth a resolution at the district levels of all the Lions clubs in the state of Michigan, which there are 459 of them. And the resolution states basically that we're going to do a motorcycle ride in the summer, and I will lead that motorcycle ride on a snowmobile that's got wheels and tires on it. And some of you have probably seen it around town. I've had it on the highway 4 or 5 years, and we are going to do a really big ride, and we're going to start it probably down in the square just like we did in 2012. And I don't have all the stops mapped out yet or the starting date, but it's going to start right here in Cadillac, Michigan. And that ride will continue on probably for about a month, raising funds for diabetes research. Then in the winter months, the Lions team up with the Mishkanska Snowmobile Club, and we are going to do a ride that will start in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and probably be about 6 to 8 days in the UP. Then the second phase of the ride will start in the state of Maine, and we'll go through New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Ontario, back into Michigan. So we're not done yet, and we're very happy to start some of these rides right here in my hometown. And Mishkanska is now recognized as an international snowmobile club. We have for a number of years. The only club that can say we have riders in Michigan, New York, Tennessee, Texas, 1 in Florida, 12 members from Canada, 2 members from Norway, 4 members from Sweden, 2 members from Finland, and 6 members from Russia. It is truly the only international snowmobile club in the world, and it all started right here in Cadillac at the Sands Hotel in May of 2009. So we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished, and we're going to keep working hard for diabetes. So what I like to do, I like to call the mayor and Marcus down here in the front, and then have the council members get together right where the mayor's sitting, and our good friend here from the Cadillac News, am I right? We'll take a good picture of us with me handing you the plaque, if you could accommodate me. All right. Hi. All right. Good thing, Don.
Oh, oof. Can you set them down? Come on over, Sharon.
Yeah. Get everybody in there if you can.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate all your help.
Get you a little place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that.
Get your milk crate. Stand up. It's like he's my brother all the time. They look the same. Except he's
Remind me to show you a picture with my son doing that. Very funny.
I had to comb my hair if I knew you were getting a photo of it.
Yeah, my brother.
I was mocking you guys, was it?
Russell.
No.
Okay. The next thing that we have on our agenda this evening are a couple of public hearings. Marcus, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. We have, as you mentioned, 2 public hearings. The first one is with respect to the 2016 through 2021 Capital Improvement Program. It's our 5-year plan. I'd like to introduce Owen Roberts, Director of Finance, accordingly. Owen?
Okay, thank you. want to just go through briefly some of the highlights from the 2017 to 2021 capital improvement program. Some of this information may be new to some of you. You have had this document in your hand for a couple of weeks. Hopefully you've had a chance to skim through it a little bit. I know a couple of you weren't able to make our work session last Thursday, but we did talk about some of the projects, especially the year one projects there. So just to give some background to those who may not have seen this before and for the benefit of the public, the purpose of our 5-year capital improvement plan is multifaceted. This is not a required process by any means. There's no code or charter section that requires us to do this process, but this is something that was put in place many years ago, and I think is a very wise process that we do each year, mainly for planning, scheduling, coordination. To give you the most probably obvious example, this would be so we don't do a street and then a year or two later realize that there's some old utilities infrastructure underneath where we just put a brand new street. So it helps us coordinate all those things. It helps us plan for the financing for some of these things. It is $14 million of projects in here, so we can't find that kind of money overnight. So that's another one of the important things that this process helps us to do each year. We define a capital project as a physical asset or a major piece of software that's going to cost more than $7,500, which matches the council's spending threshold. So these are the things that you'll see again in the future, the projects that we put in here, and that will benefit or have a useful life of greater than 1 year. So the types of projects that you'll see in this each year: streets, water and sewer, infrastructure, pipes, equipment to use in the system, projects here at our facility at the municipal complex, other special kinds of projects that we do from time to time, all the vehicles that we have in service across all of our operations and departments, and a lot of the heavy equipment that you see doing the big heavy work out in the Department of Public Works and in the utilities department. So these would be things like plows, loaders, tractors, Vector trucks, things like that. An important note, as part of this program, all of these projects are simply proposed by the program. So when you approve the program, which we'll ask you to do at the conclusion of our discussion tonight, you're not actually saying you're giving the green light necessarily for each of these projects. That happens through the appropriations process in the budget. To summarize this year's capital improvement program, there are 167 projects, so I thought I'd go through each one of them one by one, and if I can get through each one in a minute or less, that's 3 hours, so that should be good. No, we're gonna skim through some of the highlight projects, and then we'll simply ask for questions at the end. But you can see the different types of projects that have flown into this year's documents and a couple of pictures there. Altogether, once again, $14,146,000 worth of projects that we've identified, some in the first year or two that are probably a little more viable and have some funding identified at this time, some of which are more distant looking perhaps, but we want to get them on there identified as needs for the future of the city. One of the primary things that you'll see as part of the document is street and utilities infrastructure. So the combination of these two over the 5-year period is $8 million, and that represents 57% of the total. And incidentally, too, because of the timing of these, a little bit of this information will be redundant as we move into the budget public hearing that'll come next. But we'll not detail it twice. We'll skim over it for the second time. So year one street projects that we currently have scheduled. These are not designed, bid, or anything yet, so they are still subject to some fluidity, but working with the engineering department, this is the schedule that we have in the shorter term. So sections of these streets: Leeson, Everett, Holly Road, East Garfield Street, Simon Street, Selma Street, Marble, and Blodgett Streets are scheduled in for the next year. So you can see with the combination of the street project costs and the utilities infrastructure underneath, it's about $1.75 million, 1.76. We've talked about for a couple of years the issuance of bonds to pay for these things, and as we get into the budget, you'll see some good news on that front. But with some other projects that we have going on, primarily the Plaza project, the Commons, as we have now titled that project. There's some interplay with some bond financing that is going to be upcoming, and so we're getting real close on that aspect of this. So we're looking at doing that to fund the first probably up to about 2 years of street infrastructure projects, and then we're going to attempt to pay cash for the utilities portion. So that's good news as well. To highlight a couple of the projects, I think we've highlighted this one for about the last 5 CIP public hearings, and we're getting down to the final stretch on this thing. But this is the most significant project that's in the budget. It's about 20% of the total cost, so I want to make sure that we did draw some attention to that. This has been a few years in the making. The initial phase has been online for several years now, and we're getting real close to this next phase. So we're currently testing the water at the site that we've secured a purchase agreement on, and as long as that comes in good, we should be able to secure that property and move forward real quick with the identification of the funding, the design and then the bidding out of that project. So we've broken it out based on some pretty preliminary estimates at this point, comparing what we paid for the last well field and then making some estimates based on other things we may need to do at the new site. Again, want to make sure that we do highlight that it is preliminary, and these costs could go up or down by, any factor. So, but that is the preliminary breakdown of that. Just a few more highlights. We've continued our plan for keeping our patrol vehicle fleet both looking nice and being safe to operate. I think our guys drive around in the best looking fleet that you'll see anywhere, really. These are great looking vehicles. We don't buy them just for the looks, though. All the word that I get is they really like these vehicles, the safety of them. These new Interceptors that we're buying are all-wheel drive, and so that's obviously a safety factor in northern Michigan. So we want to continue to make sure we have a safe fleet of patrol vehicles, and so we've continued that. One for each year in the 5-year program. Total cost over the 5 years of $167,000. That does include the K-9 vehicle in year 2. I was going to get a great picture in the sun of the fire rescue truck today, and I went down there to do that, and it was actually out on a call today. So there was a brush fire. That's good news. The fire rescue truck, we're going to replace the cab and chassis part. There's some newer equipment on it. I think some of you were able to see that last Thursday night. The truck is a 1994, and I think has gone through about 3 different iterations of functionality throughout the years. It was a rescue truck, and then they put some brush firefighting apparatus on the back. That's what it currently is. I think it's been that way for about 10 years, and that equipment is still in very good operational condition. They do take very good care of their equipment down there, so we're able to reuse the equipment that's on the back of the truck, simply buy a cab and chassis, have it remounted, and then just do the wiring. So planning on that in the current fiscal year. Looking at a new street sweeper. Again, this falls into the heavy equipment category. These things are very, very costly, but obviously this time of year you can definitely see the need to have these in the fleet and the benefit of having them. We're looking at a cost of about $200,000, and that is net of trade-in probably. So these things are not, they don't give these away, and we're going to have to plan for the cash flow on that. Probably need to do something in the form of an internal loan or something like that just to help cash flow those purchases. In addition, we're going to look at a bucket truck for the year. We purchased our current unit in 1997, so we look at 10 to 15 year life on these things, and we've been able to extend those really across the board with most of our equipment by a number of years. So again, credit to our crew who takes good care of the equipment, that we're able to get max life out of these things. This one is not able to be safety certified at this point, and so it really is something that we need to move on in the short term. Incidentally, as we go through here, and again, not to be repetitive for the next process, but all but one of the year one projects that you'll find in the CIP are proposed in the budget for next year. The one that didn't make it into the actual budget is for the trailhead opening, and again, that's going to be really subject to some grant financing that if we're able to secure that this year, we'll simply amend that into the budget. So other than that, we've been able to build all of those into the plan. Some final project highlights for you here. In year 3, we do have a fire pumper. Again, we're going to most likely go after some grant help on this, and we're hopeful that we can help offset at least part of the costs on that. That's in year 3. We do have 4 more plow trucks in here. In years 2 through 5 at a cost of $710,000. So again, that's going to be something that we need to look out and plan for from a cash flow perspective. We have 5 plow trucks in our day-to-day operational fleet, and so if we're able to do this, if we're able to pull this off from a financing perspective, each one of those, then all 5 of our mainline plow trucks will be less than 5 years old. So we're well past that. I think I've said before, our newest plow truck before the one that we just bought comes in as a 2006 is our newest one. So definitely a fleet that we need to maintain and keep up. The Kenwood Park bathrooms are in year 2, 17 and 18. Again, we're hoping to identify some form of grant financing to help us with this. These bathrooms really are in desperate need of raising and rebuilding. So we're very hopeful to do that, to make that park, again, just to refresh the restroom facilities out there. 10 service trucks are a part of the CIP, annual technology investment that we're planning for. Well field testing and manhole rehabilitation. These are the things that Jeff and his crew put in here a couple of years ago, and I think we're very wise in doing so. These are, if you haven't seen some pictures, we have some of these of the condition of a manhole as they go in and identify it before they come in and put a new lining surface in there, and then the condition of it after the fact. It's pretty remarkable what they're able to do, really at a cost, not too much of a cost. We do about 10 of them, I think, a year. We've done the last couple of years at about $25,000 a year. So I think a very, very wise thing that we're able to do to extend the life of those. Those are expensive things to put in. And then 5 riding mowers. So this would be cemetery and parks. These aren't your average ordinary mowers. These are pretty high dollar, about $9,000 each, riding lawn mowers that we use every day in the maintenance of the parks and the cemetery. That's the highlights of the document that I wanted to provide for you, just to talk about what happens next to this program. We are going to ask you, if you're satisfied at the end of our discussion tonight, to approve the program that sets in place the plan over the next 5 years, helps us with our budget. Year 1 of the program then gets programmed in as the capital budget for the fiscal year 2017 annual operating budget, and we talked about getting all of the projects in there for that. It's at that point then, right now, that we're specifically addressing the financing for the year 1 projects, and they will then come back to you to approve the actual purchase at the time once those purchases are bid out. So that sums up what I wanted to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Is our whole fleet of riding lawnmowers at 5, and then so they just last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, again, I couldn't tell you with specificity. I don't even know really how many, if we have 5 or 6 of these things. So yeah, replacing 1 a year, both in the cemetery and the parks. You know, they get used every single day, pretty much throughout the summer. So really, they get max life out of these things until they're, you know, the wheels are about ready to fall off of them. So.
If I could just make a recommendation to council to verify if there's anyone from the public that wishes to...
Oh, yeah, public hearing's still open, that's correct.
Close that, and then you guys can continue.
Okay, at this time, we'll open for any public comments. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that. And open it for any further council discussion.
Everything looks in line, everything looks appropriate. They're all things we need to have. Thank you, Alden, for the presentation, very well done.
And yes, we did look under the floor mats of the fire rescue vehicle the other evening. It's pretty impressive. But they've kept it looking so good.
I think they were playing tricks on me because, you know, when I went back today, they had it parked outside of the garage with jumper cables on the front. So, you know, I think they saw me coming and quick put
jumper cables.
And actually, the guy out there working on it kind of made that joke, hey, we were going to go get you and come back and have you see the cables on it. But it's ready to be done.
Yeah.
I think it's really good to see some moving ahead with some street repairs. That's, you know, been an ongoing issue for quite a while. Looking forward to the ones that are even going to start soon, like in May, I think. Bruce told us, so maybe in June. I continue to have concerns about North Boulevard. I don't think it's going to be able to last 2 more years, especially in some spots. And then the other one that I don't see anywhere, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is Chestnut between Lynn and Leeson. That's pretty bad, and I don't see it anywhere on the schedule, so I don't know. Might be something to take a look at.
That has me raise a question too. I did get a call from a citizen asking me about West Division Street. So, do we have any idea when West...
That's one that gets started in June.
That's one that's about to go out to bid. So we're going to do all the way from Leeson down past, is it out to Selma? Seneca. So a large chunk of that will be done, including the intersection there with Leeson and West Division where it's so bad.
Okay, great.
So that's coming up. The plans are all set. That's going to be MDOT financing, so that takes it's a little more in-depth with the MDOT financing.
All right, very good, thank you.
And you're going to put a sidewalk up on there too, right?
West Division?
Yeah,
I'll have to look into that.
on the north side there. I don't care what side it's on, just as long as we get a sidewalk. And we really need some way for pedestrians to be able to move through there. Just saying. It's in the city, it's a street, we've got pedestrians, we need to accommodate them.
They're walking in the street now.
Yeah, and it's a very narrow shoulder. You can't even ride a bike through there, it's so difficult.
It will be wider, so...
That'll certainly help.
I don't know if they heard you, but you had commented about Chestnut between Leeson and what was the other street? I didn't catch that.
Well, I said Lynn, but I don't know if I'm right.
Lynn?
Linden.
Linden, okay.
It would be Linden, the one that's next to the high school.
Yeah, I'll look into that. I was thinking that was on there, but
I didn't hear it right.
I know we've talked about that one before.
And Cobb Street starts soon, right?
Yep, that'll be similar schedule as West Division. Those will be bid together.
Good.
What one is that?
Cobb.
Going up to the hospital. Okay. With all of that being said, do we have a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the 2016 to 2021 5-year capital improvement program as presented.
I'll support that. Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Spolman,
Yes.
Wolfile,
Yes.
Meinhardt,
Yes.
Shippers,
Yes.
Mayor Schultz.
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The next public hearing is regarding the 2017 fiscal year annual operating budget. Ellen Roberts. You materialized again.
All right, here we are.
Same staff member?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Sorry for your luck there. Yeah.
Good thing he's
yeah.
easy to watch and
Yeah.
listen to.
Well, I appreciate that. This one may be a little bit more in-depth as we talk about very specific financing. Again, kind of a high-level overview, and very similar to what we talked about on Thursday night, but I thought we highlighted a lot of the salient points of the budget where these are the things that I think that really matter on a big picture scale. And again, as we move into more of a discussion, we can get as specific as you desire to get here tonight. I think we've also talked about scheduling another session where we could talk further. And unlike the CIP, there will be no action required tonight as part of this. Later in the meeting, we'll introduce the actual ordinance to adopt the budget and schedule another public hearing. But that's specific to the ordinance adoption, and that will happen on May 16th. So that's the night you'll come together to actually take action on the budget, and we can do anything with it up until that point, or really even beyond. But on that night, you'll be asked to actually adopt the ordinance that sets the budget for the year. So a little bit different and a little bit more in depth as we go into this process. Again, nowhere near 3 hours, so I'll move through it quickly, and feel free to stop me or note your questions for the end. I always like to just start with what our requirements are as far as the city charter goes. This is, again, a process that's required by the charter, and it does have some very specific dates that are tied to this process. So on April 1st, there's a budget that is delivered to the City Council. Typically then, as part of our process, we're not required to have work sessions as part of that. But again, to provide that opportunity for discussion and input, we've held those for a number of years, and I think that's very good policy. The charter says in about mid-April that we're required to have a budget public hearing and provide public notice of that public hearing at least 10 days in advance, and so we did that a couple of weeks ago after the last meeting when we set this public hearing. So we did that. Tonight, the budget public hearing, you're able to have additional discussions. Again, modifications can be made as needed. Sometime after May 10th, but before the end of May, is when the council must, by ordinance, adopt a budget. So that, again, is very specific in the charter. And then the charter takes effect July 1st of each year, which is the first day of our fiscal year. To give you an overall summary of the budget, this year's version contains $19,775,400 in proposed appropriations across all funds and activities of the city. I wanted to highlight for you, though, just a couple of the kind of more specific or significant activities, and these are some of the ones that will be highlighted in a little more depth in this presentation. So the general fund and the water and sewer fund comprise more than 50% of our total operations and budget here at the city. So those are the ones we'll spend most of our time on. The capital projects fund is the streets. There is one more year and a little bit of the SAW grant that has to be done, I believe, in September of 2017. So we'll have a budget for this year, and there may be some residual budget that happens next year. We've spent about $1 million of that, and we have about $1 million to go. That, if you'll remember, is a $2 million zero match grant from the state, and that's for services only related to stormwater and wastewater. So we'll come out of it with some pretty important things, asset management plans for both of those systems. We'll come out of it with a little bit of new equipment. We'll come out of it with a full rate study done for the sewer system. So I think that'll be very valuable to have. That won't be done for probably about a year, a little bit more. So hopefully in the next budget process we'll be able to present some of that to you as well. The major and local street funds are some funds of special interest, and then there's some component units. Those numbers are a little bit bigger this year because the DDA is accounting for all of the costs related to the plaza project that's upcoming. One of the things that we need to talk about as part of our public hearing tonight is our millage rates. And once again, there's no change proposed in these current citywide millage rates. They are at their lowest levels that can't be raised without a referendum vote. So we're going to maintain those rates at this point. Our city operating millage of 13.9473 mils, police and fire retirement millage of 2.6 mils, and then on the downtown properties only, those that are within the DDA district, there is a millage of 1.9548 mils. So again, that millage is not levied on all properties, just on those within the DDA district, and then the proceeds of that millage need to be spent then within the DDA. And just another note there that a portion of each of these levies is captured by DDA, LDFA, and Brownfield. So our primary source, we're going to go through a little bit of the general fund. Our primary source of revenue, as you know, is property taxes. And this is an area where we've had some significant challenge. Again, I thank Chris for his story. I think he did a nice job of presenting some of the things that have taken place. Used a really cool graphic, I think, on presenting how we spend our money primarily in the general fund. So I appreciate him getting some of that information out there. Our taxable value peaked in 2009. It was $261,707,778. For this year, it is an estimated, again, these are preliminary numbers, $224,108,130. So that is a net loss of our taxable value of almost $0.6 million. Calculated out just with our operating millage is a loss of revenue of $524,000 projected. There is the reimbursement this year. This is year one of the phase-in of the elimination of personal property taxes on manufacturing personal property. So that created quite a drop of about $22 million in our taxable value for personal property. But the state has said, based on the reform that was passed, that they're going to reimburse us for 100% of that. I think that the language said something like, for those services related to essential services like police, fire, and ambulance, 100% reimbursement, and then 100% of the rest as long as there's money there. So you can take that with a grain of salt and react to that how you will. That makes me nervous, and we have that in the back of our mind that may not come in at full bill. We're hopeful, but unsure. No, next slide. Our second largest source of revenue in the general fund is state shared revenue. And again, this is one that you've heard a lot about recently. This number peaked in 2001 for the city. We received $1.3 million from the state. Projected for this current proposed budget is $980,000, and that's a projection of flat over what we're looking at receiving in the current fiscal year. So if you do the subtraction there, that's a loss, a real reduction of $320,000, and if you combine that with the number on the bottom right on that slide of $204,000, that yields a loss of over $500,000 in revenue since both of these things peaked out. So I think the challenges we face are revenue specific. We've continued to adjust and reduce costs, and you can see it in our staffing numbers that are down. They're down one additional person again this year, but we're going to continue to have to do that. And so that's what we're looking at. I think Marcus wants to pick up some commentary on the Save My City site.
Talking with Owen earlier today about the slideshow, he knew before I even said anything I was going to be just chomping at the bit to jump in and interrupt here. So thank you for creating this pause for me to do just that. Going back to the phase-in of the industrial personal property tax program, or tax reform program, this was as the state championed to get it approved across the various labor groups and non-labor groups, getting business behind it, that this was going to be the program that was going to spark new growth and investment in the state of Michigan. You were going to see thousands of jobs flocking and industries reinvesting all of essentially these tax breaks back into their businesses, and then the local communities, essentially through trickle-down economics, because it all still has to pass through the state's coffers before it goes to ours, would end up flourishing. But since then, if you pull some of the headlines, you see Ford is relocating to Mexico, at least some of their operations, and you see, while you do see some new interesting growth around the state, it hasn't quite flushed out the way it was promised. Now, as our finance director said, and he's in touch with MGFOA, and I'm on listservs across the state, we're all sort of waiting for that check in the mail this fall to make us whole, as they promised, especially with respect to the essential services piece, to make the reimbursement at 100% when it comes to police and fire operations. Should that not happen, we are going to have to come back to the City Council to talk about what's next. There could be a host of different options that we're going to have to explore. Everything from looking at, and I might get the act wrong, but I want to say it's like a PA 33. It's a special assessment for police and fire operations that can be used for the operational and capital equipment piece that make those departments function, to looking at an income tax, to looking at something else. It is our mission to provide our core services, which, again, as Owen had mentioned, we have been doing for the last almost couple of decades here, certainly close to a decade and a half, in a very diligent manner, just kind of skating through. We have been reducing our level of full-time employment wherever possible, reallocating how our services are provided, all so that the end user, so that our citizen, whether they're a residential citizen or a corporate citizen, doesn't really feel that impact. That's our objective, is to make it so that people aren't feeling that there's a change in how we're providing the service. But if these promises don't come through from the state, it's going to be very difficult in the year to come. We're going to have to figure out how to best handle that. That being said, I don't want the council to think that it's all doom and gloom. There is a very strong effort being kickstarted by the Michigan Municipal League. They have a strong coalition in the state looking at trying to create fiscal statutory reform. The Save My City, SAVEMICITY.org website has a lot of data that anyone is encouraged to look up about what's happening statewide and how you can get involved. Also, as everybody knows, the city here is definitely taking the reins. We are moving forward with some tremendously exciting placemaking programs, all for the purpose of making things happen here locally. By us investing in our community and by turning these assets that we have into better gathering places for people, and by adding the new amenities and the entire collaborative community effort that's behind it and making all this happen, that new investment will spark new growth in our community, and that's what we're really trying to focus on right now, is doing what we can to make the situation as best as we possibly can. So, Owen, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you
for that opportunity.
Yep. If you look just in the first, when I make the joke to people that I took over this job in 2008 and I've been delivering bad news ever since. You look at even the state shared revenue. Peaked in 2001, like we mentioned, but then dropped compared to what we got the prior year in 10 out of the next 15 years. That's challenging. On the expenditure side for the general fund, you can see the major categories of spending on the chart. That the word breaks on the pie chart don't look the way they do, fortunately, in your printout. On the display, they got a little bit messed up. But basically, just to highlight that public safety is 50% of our budget. That's a pretty self-explanatory category, includes police and fire, and code enforcement. General government, which is where you find a lot of the other legislative, manager, finance, engineering, city complex, those kind of city attorney, those kinds of costs. Public works, some of the public works expenses for the city fall within the general fund, and then a couple of other smaller categories there as well. Just a summary again on the expenditure side for the general fund. Obviously, we're primarily a service organization, and as part of that, 64% of our general fund spending is within the personnel and benefits costs category. Some details on that: we are programming a 1.5% COLA at this point. That's been after a couple of years of nothing and a couple of small years then again too. We did reduce full-time staffing by one person when our former cemetery foreman retired. We've kind of blended that work mainly into the Department of Public Works Street Department crew, and then overseen by our Parks and Cemetery Superintendent will provide management oversight of the cemetery function. Our transfers to other funds are actually down quite significantly. The general fund provides funding for cemetery operations, and then a pretty significant transfer each year to the local street fund. That one was down most significantly. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's based mainly on the reform that was passed in Michigan related to street funding, which kicked up the motor vehicle registration fees a little bit, and then the gas taxes a little bit, and those are beginning in 2017, but because of timing of fiscal years, that will begin to benefit us in the current fiscal year. I have some more details on that when we talk about the street funds, but that was really good news. We're grateful for that. Capital outlay, $86,000 in the general fund. As we mentioned before, a police patrol vehicle, the truck, and then a mower. So at the end of the day, we're getting closer to not only structural balance, which there's a chart in your budget that will show that the general fund at least has achieved structural balance for the year as long as revenues come in as promised. That chart, if you want to make a note, is on page 54. We are proposing the use of an additional $36,000 of our reserves, and that simply is to help with the capital purchases. So as long as the fund balance is above our policy levels of 15%, and we continue to fully fund any liabilities that we would have for accrued but unused leave time for all the employees, we're comfortable with that recommendation. User charges, this will begin in the general fund, and then as part of this discussion we'll move into the water and sewer fund. Our solid waste removal and recycling contract or contracts, we use Republic Services for the solid waste removal, and Ms. Green continues to provide our recycling. This is looking like it may be a slight decrease once again for fiscal year 2017. Both of these are tied to some inflationary indexes, both from a fuel index and other costs index. We're beginning year 4 of 5 on the contract, and these rates are less now than they were in year 1. And that was the cost of fuel when we adopted these contracts was when it was at its highest, in the $4 range, and now it's well below that. So having part of that index to fuel prices has provided a benefit for the city. Again, these are my projections based on the actual indexes. We're yet to get concurrence on those from the service providers, but the calculations are pretty straightforward. So I'm going to move into the water and sewer fund at this point. I'm going to begin with a talk about rates. To get it out, we're requesting a 2.5% rate increase. We did spend some good time talking about that last Thursday. The rate increase is after a 3% increase that we had approved for the current fiscal year, and that was following those 3 years of a 0% increase. So if you average those out over those 5 years, it's still fairly minimal. Understand that it does impact our users, but the average residential user will see an increase, if approved, of about $1 per month. So as we move through this process, keep that in mind. This budget is based on that. Again, later tonight we'll introduce those ordinances, and then 2 weeks from tonight we'll actually have a public hearing where it'll be Jeff's turn to be up here and kind of making a presentation. He'll provide some rate comparisons that we do each year, showing that we compare pretty favorably as far as the rates go. And so there are obligations, though, of the system that we continue to need to meet. One of those is our debt service coverage, just meaning we have enough available cash to make our debt service payments each year. Those are things that we've promised to bondholders, and if we don't meet those, potentially those bondholders could say, I want all my money back. So we want to make sure that we continue to keep those promises. Some additional justification to give you some talking points as you may interact with some of our system users or would have those questions yourself. We've talked about it on many occasions, but the well field is a very significant project, both in terms of cost and in terms of impact on the system. We are planning the use of low-interest financing for that project, and so we need to be ready to provide some additional debt service when we make that investment. So these well fields should last, 40, 50 years, and so you can see we need to prepare to have the funds available to meet those obligations. In addition, our operating budget continues to be impacted by having to replace a number of meters, mainly some batteries on some of the MXU units and things like that. Those were replaced 12 to 15 years ago, depending on which year the meter was replaced. Originally, the units had about 10-year batteries in them, and so again, those have lasted longer than what they were initially projected to last, but they're dying now at a pretty high frequency. And so we had to take what once was, a $30,000 operating supply line item and kick it up to almost $100,000. And so that's simply to replace those meters. The new meters have a 20-year life, and from what I'm told, we're estimated to need that budget for 1 to 2 more fiscal years. So once that process is done, that'll free that money up to be reinvested in the system in other places. Wanted to note that the late fees that were implemented, again, as a charge for service, there's extra services required on late accounts, did help kind of offset or mitigate the need for a larger rate increase. Cost summary in the water and sewer fund. Manpower in this fund comprises about 35% of the system costs. There will be no change recommended in staffing levels this year. Again, the 1.5% COLA will apply. They also have some steelworker union employees that work in the system. That's primarily the crew that's out there doing a lot of the work. That contract is currently in negotiations. So I would think in the next month or two you'll see the result of that process come before you. And again, then the meter replacements that we just talked about is a significant cost of the system. From a capital perspective, the well field, no need to go into detail on some of this stuff again, but infrastructure, equipment, and some other small purchases that add up in the aggregate to $85,000. Just want to continue to point out, I think it's very, very positive that the only thing we're taking out debt for is a well field, and that's a project that will benefit users for 40 to 50 years, and we're continuing to be able to have the funds to use on a pay-as-you-go basis for some of these other pretty significant costs, $655,000 that we're projecting no need for additional financing to do those things. If you look over the last few years and some of those purchases that have come before you for the water and sewer fund, $400,000 Vector truck, a front-end loader or backhoe, I think it was, of $95,000 that we're able to pay cash for, and I think that's a very positive sign for our system, and we do have a decent level of reserves on hand in the water and sewer fund as well to help with that. So want to make sure we point all those things out, both for talking points and to answer questions that you all may have as well. The major and local street funds, again, legislative reform primarily related to fuel taxes and motor vehicle registration fees begins in 2017. That will begin to benefit us this year. That is looking like we're going to project, based on formulas and numbers provided by MDOT, $100,000 in additional revenue for the major street fund and about $45,000 for the local street fund. The things that new revenue will allow us to do, it will ease reliance on the general fund, which again, if you compare the 125 to we're still having to budget for about $36,000 use of fund balance in the general fund. That story could be a lot worse without this new revenue. So we're grateful for that. That also provides some excess in revenues over expenditures, which is combined at $163,300. This provides us in full the capacity to service up to $2 million in capital improvement debt. So on a 15-year debt issue, which is what we'd be looking at for street projects, it's about $80,000 per year in debt service for each $1 million in financing. So we're right there with being able to do that, and that'll provide us some very significant opportunity for capital investment. So we've had some initial discussions with a financial advisor, and so we're gonna continue to move down that path. I wanted to point out, with that level of street projects, we will continue to need to maintain our relationship with our contractual engineer, which is Prine and Newhoff, which helped us with the West Division and Cobb Street project. So we'll continue to maintain that relationship for that assistance as well. So that $2 million in bond issuance will help provide us that $1.3 million for the street, and then have some left over for year 2 projects as well. So I'll also point out that our only other debt issue related to capital projects was from 2004, and there's just about 3 more years of debt service on that, and that'll free up another $80,000 a year. So if you project that out, we should be able to do pretty significant work here over the next couple of years. Just to go through a final list of some other things, the Naval Reserve Center is in dire need of some capital investment, but the precursor to that is having the money to do it. And based on the current structure of how we can put tenants in there, we need to identify some tenants. So that's a challenge. Wanted you to be aware of it. The SAW grant activities, we talked a little bit about that. There's $1 million in the budget for this year, with an estimate that we've spent about $1 million so far. Our fleet fund, again, bucket trucks, sweeper, V-plow, and we'll use some reserves on hand internally to help with the cash flow of that. The Cadillac Commons project, I think we're settling on a name, as we kind of joked about that at the work session. That is funded through the DDA Capital Projects Fund. The DDA has pledged their captured tax revenue to help service the debt, to be able to do a significant amount of that. So combined with some of the grants that you've seen that have come through that we've gotten, some other contributions and pledges of funds, we're looking at a pretty substantial change, improvement in our downtown. So there's a lot of excitement about that. Okay, that's it. That was a lot. Again, always want to be available to answer questions. We can have some additional discussion tonight. The budget is available. We invite the public to look at that in several settings. There is a copy of both the budget and the recently approved CIP at the library, and there is a copy that can be looked at here. You can simply ask for it at our front counter. Both of these documents that we talked about tonight are also on the city's website. The budget can be accessed most easily just by going to our main page, cadillac-mi.net/budget. So pretty easy to get to. The City Council, next step, will consider the budget for adoption and that's again by ordinance, so there will be another public hearing opportunity for public input on May 16th. At your will and pleasure, we can set up any additional times to get together as a group, or always invite you to contact myself or Marcus anytime to ask any questions that you may have. We can do anything with the budget up until that time before adoption. After adoption, we got to wait till the year starts and then do an amendment. So always changeable. Then again, the budget takes effect on July 1st. So with that, I'm going to go to my seat, and you can digest that for a second and ask any questions that you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Owen. At this time, we'll go ahead and open for a public hearing. Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing and have any further discussion that you guys would like to. We don't have to take any action this evening, but...
Owen, do you remember off the top of your head, I'm sure you do, this is your budget, what we took out of reserves for what's in the budget to take out of reserves for 2016?
I do. Yep. I'll look it up here real quick just so I don't miss.
I'm trying to find it in here. Maybe you can...
Yeah, so if you look at page 59.
59?
59 in your document.
Okay.
We had budgeted the use of $99,000. I'm projecting that we're going to use a little bit less than that. And the calculations of complying with the policy include that. So we'll continue to maintain our policy levels of fund balance even with that use.
And how did we come out with 2015?
15 is on that same page. We went down about $104,000. Part of that, though, was a couple of retirements that we had, so that reduced our fund balance that we have set aside for accrued but unused leave time balances. So when someone who still has that payout benefit retired, we were able to use that reserve. So of that $104,000, not 100% of that came out of our main reserve fund. So. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So our policy is 15%.
15%, and then if you look at page 60, it provides you a little more detail on the categories. What we've called sick and vacation funding, that's to fund that liability, and that's for all employees except water and sewer employees. And so to have that there is that's a very prudent reserve. So that, yeah, on page 60 kind of gives you some additional details.
So that's an addition? Wait a minute.
The total then for, in the bold column in fiscal year 2017, 1.843, and so it combines all of those totals. So the first 75, the 43 in restricted, the 1.4 in assigned, and the unassigned of 263. Those titles are accounting titles that we're required to use, basically,
yeah.
And it really is the level of authority on who can use those funds. So non-spendable basically is not cash. Restricted is things that can only be used for the purpose that they were received for. Assigned is basically can be moved around by council or management action. Unassigned is just something that no specific use has been identified for it. So we have the working capital 15%, which is the 978 in the assigned category. And then we have the unassigned of 263. So the 263 really represents available fund balance in addition to our 15% policy. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on the budget?
I have nothing at this point.
Okay.
Thank you again, Owen.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, Sandy, we have some communications for this evening.
Yes, we have a request from the Cadillac Fire Department for the closure of Leicester Street between Cobb and Hobart on May 17th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. for a hazmat drill, and they're going to be conducting this in conjunction with the hospital.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve the closure of Leicester Street between Cobb and Hobart on May 17th of 2016 from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. for their hazmat drill. I'll support.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Wolfile?
Yes.
Meinhardt?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Bowman?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes. Motion carried. And that takes us to introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This first item this evening is to introduce the resolution that introduces an ordinance establishing the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2017 and to set the public hearing for May 16th.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to introduce ordinance establishing General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2017 and set a public hearing for May 16th.
Second.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Meinhardt?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Bowman?
Yes.
Wolfile?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The next item is with respect to the adoption of a resolution to introduce an ordinance to amend Section 42-374 of Chapter 42 of the City Code to increase sewer rates in the City of Cadillac 2.5% and to set a public hearing for May 2nd, 2016.
All right, I'll make that motion to adopt a resolution to introduce ordinance to amend Section 42-374 of Chapter 42 of the City Code to increase sewer rates in the City of Cadillac 2.5% and set a public hearing for May 2nd, 2016.
Support.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Shippers?
Yes.
Bowman?
Yes.
Wolfile?
Yes.
Meinhardt?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This next item is essentially identical to the one you just approved. This one, however, is for water rates. It's in reference to amending Sections 42-201 and 42-202, subsection 3 of Chapter 42 of the City Code to increase water rates by 2.5%. This is, again, just setting a public hearing, and it would be for May 2nd.
I'll make that motion.
Support.